Good day everyone. Our topic for today is all about review on laws of exponent. So let's start. First question is, what is an exponent? So an exponent is a quantity representing the power to which a given number or expression is to be raised, usually expressed as a raised symbol beside the number or an expression. So for example, 3 in 2 raised to 3. And this equals to 2 times 2 times 2, 3 times. The base a raised to the power of n is equal to the multiplication of a n times, like this. A raised to n is equals to a times a, this is n times, where a is the base and n is the exponent. Now let's have some examples, like 3 raised to 1, and this is just 3. 3 raised to 2 means 3 times 3, 2 times, and this equals to 9. 3 cubed is equals to 3 times 3 times 3, this is 3 times, or equals to 27. 3 raised to 4 is equals to 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, 4 times, and this equals to 81. Last, 3 raised to 5, this equals to 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, 5 times, and this equals to 243. Now let's have the exponent rules and properties, and this is just a review. So number 1 is the product rules. We have a raised to n times a raised to m, and this equals to a raised to n plus m. Let's have an example. We have 2 raised to 3 times 2 raised to 4, and this equals to 2 raised to 3 plus 4, or simply 2 raised to 7, and this equals to 128. So, ang tatandaan nyo dito, basta same yung base, pag minultiply natin, add lang yung exponent. Next, we have a raised to n times b raised to n, and this equals to the product of a times b raised to n. Let's have an example. We have 3 squared times 4 squared, and this equals to 3 times 4 raised to 2. Or simply, 3 times 4 is 12, raised to 2 is 144. Now, ito yung kailangan yung tandaan. Kapag same yung exponent at minumultiply natin, i-multiply muna natin yung kanyang base and then saka natin erase sa exponent. Next, let's have the quotient rules. The first one, we have a raised to n all over a raised to m, and this equals to a raised to n minus m. Yung exponent na nasa taas minus yung exponent na nasa ibaba. Let's have an example. We have 2 raised to 5 all over 2 raised to 3, and this equals to 2 raised to 5 minus 3, or 2 raised to 2 or 2 squared, and this simply equals to 4. Second, if we have a raised to n all over b raised to n, and this equals to a over b raised to n. Okay, dun sa una, tandaan nyo mabuti to, we have the same base. So, parehas a. So, parehas 2. Dito, magkaiba tayo ng base. We have a and ito ay b. So, hindi sila magkamuka. Okay, let's have an example. We have 4 raised to 3 all over 2 raised to 3. Now, ang magkamuka lang sa kanila yung exponent. So, ano yung pwede natin gawin? Divide muna natin yung 4 divided by 2 and then raise to 3. 4 divided by 2 ay 2, raised to 3 is simply 8. And that's it. Now let's have the power rules. Let's have the first one. We have parenthesis b raised to n and then raised to m. This equals to b raised to n times m. So multiply lang natin yung kanilang exponent. Let's have an example. We have quantity 2 raised to 3, then raised to 2. This equals to 2 raised to 3 times 2. 3 times 2 is 6, so 2 raised to 6 will give us 64. And that's it. Second, we have a power tower. We have b raised to n raised to m. This equals to b raised to n raised to m. Okay, ito ay pababa. Okay, so unahin natin yung nasa taas. Kunin mo natin yung value. And then yun yung magiging exponent nung nasa ibaba niya. So let's have an example. We have 2 raised to 3 raised to 2. This equals to 2 raised to 3 raised to 2. 3 raised to 2 is 9. So magiging 2 raised to 9 or simply 512. And that's it. Next, we have the mth root of b raised to n. And this equals to b raised to n all over m. Let's have an example. If we have cube root of 2 raised to 6 and this equals to 2 raised to 6 all over 3. And 6 over 3 is simply 2. So we have 2 raised to 2 or simply 4. Next rule. Again, this is just a review for you. Next, we have b raised to 1 over n and this equals to nth root of b. Let's have an example. If we have 8 raised to 1/3, this is simply the cube root of 8 raised to 1. And cube root of 8 is simply 2. And that's it. Now let's have negative exponents. So anong gagawin natin pag negative yung exponent? If we have b raised to negative n, this equals to 1 over b to positive n. So ano nangyari? Nireciprocal lang natin siya. Okay? So let's have an example. If we have 2 raised to negative 3, this equals to 1 over 2 raised to positive 3. And this equals to 1 over 8. And that's it. May question dito, sir, paano kung nasa ibaba naman yung negative exponent? E, lalagyan natin ngayon sa taas. Okay, so ito kasi, b raised to negative n all over 1. Okay, so binaligtad lang natin, ni-reciprocal. Kapag naman nasa ilalim yung exponent, ilalagay lang naman natin siya sa numerator. So, ganun lang siya kadali. Okay. Next, let's have the zero rules. The first one, we have b raised to 0 is equals to 1. Let's have an example. If we have 5 raised to 0 and this equals to 1. So, 10 raised to 0 is equals to 1. 17 raised to 0 is equals to 1, and so on and so forth. Next, 0 raised to n is equals to 0, for n is not equal to 0. So dito, b is not equal to 0 din. Okay? So let's have an example. 0 raised to 5 is equals to 0. 0 raised to 1,000 is also equals to 0. 0 raised to 5,000 is also equals to 0, and so on and so forth. Next, one rule. If we have b raised to 1 and this equals to b. So very simple. So 5 raised to 1 is equals to 5. Pinakamadali. Okay, next. 1 raised to n is equals to 1. Kung meron tayo makikita na 1 raised to 5 and this equals to 1. If we have 1 raised to 10,000 and equal lang yun sa 1. Kung meron tayong 1 raised to 5 million, equal pa rin yan sa 1. Okay? Next, we have minus 1 rule. If we have negative 1 raised to n, dalawa yung magiging posibleng kalabasan. Equal siya sa 1 if n is even. Equal siya sa negative 1 if n is an odd number. So let's have an example. If we have negative 1 raised to 20 and the answer is 1. Bakit? Kasi yung 20 is an even number. Okay, next. Negative 1 raised to 19 is equals to negative 1. Bakit naging negative 1? Kasi yung 19 is an odd number. Now let's have the strange case of 0. So there are different arguments for the correct value of 0 raised to 0. Ano nga ba yung value ng 0 raised to 0? 0 raised to 0 could be 1 or possibly 0. And some people say it is really indeterminate. We have x raised to 0 is equals to 1. So ito yung rule. So 0 raised to 0 is equals to 1. And 0 raised to n is equals to 0. So therefore, 0 raised to 0 is also equals to 0. And kung naguguluhan tayo, alin ba dyan sa dalawa yung tamang sagot? Alin dyan sa dalawa? So medyo pamimilian natin 1 and 0. Alin dyan sa dalawa ang tama? Eh pares naman siyang tama. In that case, the correct answer for 0 raised to 0 is indeterminate. So para rin siyang 0 over 0. Okay? So let's move on. Let's apply the laws of exponents. Okay, number 1, what is the equivalent of x raised to 1/2 raised to 6? Solution. So use the property b raised to n, quantity raised to m, and this equals to b raised to n times m. So saan nyo ito makikita? Ito ay nandoon sa diniscuss natin kanina lang, yung properties and laws of exponents. Okay, so meaning this equals to x raised to 1/2 times 6. And 1/2 times 6 is simply x raised to 3. And we're done. Let's have another example. Simplify. Quantity 6x cubed y raised to -4 raised to -2 all over 3x squared y raised to the 5th power raised to -3. Okay, so we will use this property b raised to n raised to m is equals to b raised to n times m. Anong ibig sabihin? Yung exponent na nasa labas, imumultiply lang natin sa exponent ng nasa loob. So this becomes, tandaan na yung 6 ay mayroong 1, exponent na 1, kaya magiging -2 times 1, we have -2. -2 times 3, we have -6. -2 times -4, we have +8. So denominator naman tayo, -3 times 1, yung exponent ng 3, -3 times 1 is -3. -3 times 2 is -6. -3 times 5 is -15. Okay, now, notice na may magkamuka na x raised to -6. So, pwede natin siyang i-cancel. Okay, next. Next is apply natin yung rule na negative exponent. So we have b raised to -n is equals to 1 over b raised to n. So lahat ng negative exponent, i-reciprocal natin. So yung 6 raised to -2 mapupunta sa ibaba. Yung 3 raised to -3 mapupunta sa taas. Yung y raised to -15 mapupunta sa itaas. Like this. Next, apply natin yung rule na product rule. We have a raised to n times a raised to m is equals to a raised to n plus m. Bakit magkamukha yung base na kinuha natin? Kasi may nakita tayo ditong magkamukha na y. So, pwede natin siyang i-apply. So, we have 8 plus 15 is equals to 23. So, therefore, we have 3 raised to 3, y raised to 23. Bakit naging 23 to? Kasi 8 plus 15 all over 6 squared. Now, simplify natin. Ang 3 cubed natin ay 27. Ang 6 squared ay 36. Divide both side by 9. And this equals to 3 y raised to 23 all over 4. And we're done. Hindi na natin yan pwedeng i-simplify pa. Okay? And this is the simplest form of this expression. So, let's move on to the next. Example number 3. Simplify. X raised to -5, y raised to -4, x raised to -3, y raised to -2, x raised to -1, times y raised to 0. So, all over y raised to 5, x raised to the 4th, y cubed, x squared, y, times x raised to 0. So, medyo mahaba. So, solution. Let's apply the rule b raised to 0 is equals to 1. So, hindi lahat yan magiging 0. Yung y raised to 0 lang at saka yung x raised to 0 lang. Okay? Kasi wala naman yung parenthesis na nagsasabi na lahat ng iyan ay naka-raise sa 0. Okay? So, itong part lang na to, yung y raised to 0, saka yung x raised to 0 lang yung magiging 1. Okay? So, ganito yung matitira. Next, apply natin yung negative exponent. So, anong mangyayari? Lahat ng negative exponent na nasa taas mapupunta sa ibaba. Ang tanong, sir, walang matitira sa taas. Siyempre, meron. May matitira dyang 1. Don't forget that. So, pag lahat ay naibaba nyo na, automatic na meron yung nakamultiply na 1. So, ibig sabihin, 1 yung matitira sa itaas. Okay? So, sana po intindihin natin yung mabuti. Maraming nagkakamali dyan. Okay, so lahat ng negative exponent ay magiging positive pag ibinaba natin. So, ito yun. X raised to the 5th power, y to the 4th power, x raised to 3, y squared, and x. Pwede namang wala na yung x raised to 1. Okay? Pinakita lang natin na yung negative 1, nung ibinaba natin, naging positive 1. Next, simplify natin. Apply natin yung product rule. We have a raised to n times a raised to m. This equals to a raised to n plus m. So, anong mangyayari doon? Pag magkamukha daw yung base, add lang natin yung mga exponents nila. Okay, tingnan natin. Lahat ng may x dyan. So, yung x natin dito, may exponent na 5, plus 3, plus 1, ito yun, plus 4, and then plus 2. So, ito yung nasa baba. Next, lahat ng may variable y. Lahat ng exponent nun, add natin. We have 4, plus 2, ito yung plus 2, plus 5, plus 3, and then plus 1. Now, simplify natin. 5 plus 3 plus 1 plus 4 plus 2 is equals to 15. And 4 plus 2 plus 5 plus 3 plus 1. And since magkamukha lang sila, so they are both equals to 15. And therefore, we have 1 over x raised to 15, y raised to 15, and we're done. And that's all for today. As always, that's it.